increase the...
Well, if you tell me the file too, I can be looking at it simultaneously.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm
definitely.
just gonna increase the font size as well to make it
All right,
easy.
and I'm locking it in so it's your screen is staying the presented screen. So presume you'll be doing most of the talking and explaining stuff.
Yeah, if that's the case, then make sure for sure that you can read it. I think right now it's hard to read, but let me move it
Yeah.
up to like 18-point font. Okay, how about that?
That seems fine to me. I mean, mainly it's going to be
the,
you explaining conceptually what's happening, but I can read that.
yeah, and I think it's just too you're coloring like the compression is destroying the readability.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can change that real quick too. Let's see. How do I?
My color scheme is the best.
I like mine just because it's like good enough, and I didn't have to do any work. I literally just scrolled through all the like options that come in Aptana and found one that was good, and then found a way to get the same thing in Sublime.
I
Oh,
have a
Atoms.
great one for coding, but I think it's too dark for most people to see.
I mean, those are good if you code a lot at night.
Yeah, I do.
Like I
You
don't
mean like you have
understand
like a
people.
black background and like a dark color text?
It's not like super dark, but at nighttime, anything brighter than black will blind me.
Do you have Flux
Literally
installed?
blind me. Yeah, and I do have that installed, and I keep my brightness super low, but my monitor is just like out of control, super bright, which is nice during the day, but
Yeah, I've just stopped coding at night because I'm just not up at night anymore. I just go to bed.
I just changed my entire way of living.
I
Exactly, it's
just
fantastic. I go to sleep at 8 o'clock.
I just live in a windowless room with the light always on, so I don't have to deal with the rhythms of the world.
You're essentially like in a Vegas casino.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I live the Vegas lifestyle.
Programming all day long.
Yeah, the obvious Vegas lifestyle. Wow,
Yeah, not the
way
debauchery and
to
the women and
break
the
out of
drugs.
the way to break out of the mold, Tyson.
The Vegas programmer lifestyle, like a Zappos employee.
Okay, let me make this larger too.
All right, there we
Um,
go.
are the colors readable here, or let me ask you a question. Does this if I turn off flux, can you tell the difference? So if
I
I
don't think
turn
it's
on,
affecting it. Like it doesn't look. I mean, I know what Flux looks like. It'll have that like kind of orange hue. It doesn't have any of that.
all right,
Like the
then I'm gonna
grays look gray.
okay, then I'm gonna turn it back on because it gives me an immediate headache.
Do you just have like one of those LED monitors, those early ones where they just blew it out with the brightness?
It's actually it's a new one, but I think it's LED. You're right. Yeah, I need to change this. This is like the worst color scheme too in the world. I don't even know because I never use like.
Yeah, I mean, I set mine so long ago, I don't even know how to change it anymore. Like I would have to look up online how do I toggle through other schemes because I've never modified it. I basically
This is a
installed
good
Sublime
color.
a year and a half ago, figured out how to do it once, and never touched it.
All right, here we go. I think this will work.
All
Yeah,
right.
you can read this?
Yeah.
Seems fine to
Okay.
me.
All right, we're off to the races. So what should I do? Just, I
Just
guess, walk you through how everything works?
yeah, I would kind of go start to finish of what you've added.
Yeah, there's a lot. So we'll try to work through it. So I guess I'll just start at like login. I feel like that's where most things can. Well, I know you saw the new autoloader that I put
Yeah.
in here. I can go over how that works too real quick. Um, but I'll do it later. Not right now.
All
All
right.
right, let's just do experiment first. So everything through here is more or less the same. I'm in login.php.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so down to
So
what line are we talking about?
I'm looking for line. Most of this is the same. Most of this is the same. I moved some stuff around and deleted some extra stuff, but it's mostly the same up until line 143.
Okay.
And then at 143, just the basic stuff that's happening here, I'll highlight it as I go. And you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got the first line, we're going to just initiate, we're going to create the experiment class using this experiment factory. I'll go over why I use that kind of method in a second here. And then right after that, I'm going to validate everything as an initial validation, and it will spit out an array of the errors based on position, and it'll put them into validation errors.
Okay.
And then I transform that into something that can be added to your error class.
Cool.
So, and then down here spits out the errors, and you'll see something a little bit different that I added, this DDD function. And so what this this is part of Kint, which I added because you said you liked it, and so it's been a big help debugging for me. And in fact, I'll just show you what that looks like right now. If I give it, if I just negate this, it should give me, should go straight through to it. So I'm going to go ahead and run this file. Oops. I'm not sharing the screen, am I? I have to share like.
Yeah, we're just seeing the whatever the editor.
Okay, if I go to demos, anything. So Kint, so obviously looks like something's gone wrong, and it doesn't have an error message because all I did is I negated the logic.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where the DDD function comes in. When you run DDD, it will spit out experiment, and then it actually exits after that. So this code isn't actually executed, which is because I forgot to change this to just D, and then it'll run that exit code. Hold on a second. DDD runs an exit on its right after it's run, but now it's running the footer. But basically, it's pretty cool. It takes objects and anything else, and it puts it in a very cool dump that you can move around through.
Oh, so you can actually cycle through instead of what we used to have to do, where it's like, okay, piecewise dump through whatever we think might be the problem and look for errors. Here you can just shoot all of experiment.
Yeah. And not only that, but it shows you, look, I can go right here. Oh, experiment. It shows me the available methods. I mean, and the documentation I wrote for it. So it's like, it's insane. But Tyson made a good point earlier. It takes a little bit to load it. So I think it should only be on when we have debugging enabled. It's not going to help anyone else anyway.
Yeah.
So we might want to throw that check in there. But for now, I'm just going to go back and unnegate this.
Is it possible to do something like an autoloader for it, where if we never end up calling D, then we don't bother doing the require, and then if we do, we just require it and then use it?
Yeah, because
I don't think so.
We could just say, oh, if we found errors, then do that thing to experiment and show us everything.
Yeah, I think what we could do then is, so like here, what we could do is just put the require call right here after this spot. Because it's not being auto-loaded as is right now because it has to read all the files or something like that. I don't know how it works.
So you have to load Kint at the beginning to be able to use its functions?
I don't think so. I think you can just put it right here. If we just put the require Kint like where we need it.
I mean, it seems like you could even abstract away, have a function call that's called like
require.
collector dump, and all that does is
call Kint
requires
and dump.
Kint. Yeah, it just does require once and then runs D.
Yeah, that'd be cool. The only thing is that Kint is also, so I don't know if you noticed here, but it also tells you where the dump was called from.
Yeah.
Down here. So if you abstract away into a function, it'll only ever say that it's being run from the function.
Does it not have like a debug backtrace that tells you more information? Like right there, maybe it's not giving you a backtrace because you're not nested inside another file, but I assume that if you were in another file, it would just report the debug backtrace.
Yeah, so it might, but let me show you like one of the reasons why. So here, if you click this arrow underneath where it says called from root login or whatever,
Uh-huh.
it's actually pretty freaking cool. It opens it in a new window, and you can take notes and save it.
Where does it save the notes?
I have no idea. I have no idea. But I know it does it. All right. Anyway, let's do the cool stuff from Experiment because you can read about Kint on their documentation. I only use it because it dumps things really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, we kept trying to solve that problem with like our own versions that were pretty hacky. Basically, what is it? We were doing just print R.
I mean,
Oh
we had
yeah.
readable for a while, and then we just never fixed readable during the CSS changes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Um, I just I like saw it and I was like, I could try to write my own, and then I remembered, someone else probably already did it, so I didn't want to worry about it. Okay, so let's go back. So I said I use this experiment factory, so I'm just going to jump in. What I feed the experiment factory is the condition information, the procedure information, the stimuli information, and the trial types folders. But I think I'm actually going to change this to feeding it the path. I think that's smarter, and you'll see why in a second.
Also,
But let me just,
we're maintaining custom trial types. I know at one point we talked about possibly getting rid of it.
yeah.
So I guess, well, yeah,
Oh,
I guess it doesn't matter for this case, but we should.
if you did want to take it out, you just, now it's not loading any custom trial types.
Oh, well, that's kind of nice.
If you want to keep it in, keep it in. If you want to add another folder, like your own custom one, you can just add one in here, and it'll load those too. And I'll show you what it's doing when it does that. So let's go to Experiment Factory Create. Okay, so Experiment Factory Create. I mean, I've got I wrote out documentation and notes for every function, but I'll just walk you through what it does. So it's going to take this array, the condition array, the procedure array, and the stimuli array, and it's going to make an experiment out of it. And the way an experiment is created is actually only with the condition, stimuli, and validator directories, and all of them are optional. Like it will, if I go to the constructor for this, they're already initialized at empty arrays.
Okay, so if you do nothing, it just makes like a shell of an experiment.
Exactly. And the way you add trials to an experiment is actually by using an add trial function. That's why I have this factory. The factory takes the procedure array that I give it, processes it by separating the post trials out from that row using this function down here, separate post trials. And then for every trial it has in data here, so separate post trials separates all the trials into main and the post trials into this post, data post, you see?
Yeah.
It's just an array. So it takes the main one and it adds a trial, and then for all the post ones it adds a post trial to that main trial.
Okay.
So it's going to take a data row, split it into the main trial and each post trial, add the main trial to the experiment, and then add the post trials to the main trial.
Does the post trial, is it smart enough to obey? I think, what was it, Tyson? I mean, you said like off or no, because sometimes, like one of my sections might have 2 post trials, but the rest of them are just the main trial, and then I write no in the other post trial columns. So you just say, well, this one, technically there's a post trial column, but I'm not using any post trial for, row 1.
I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of a weird use case, but it does pop up. So we should have.
I don't think I handled that because none of the sample deals had that in there.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, so we really only have to edit this method to just add.
Let me write it down. Yeah, all I need to do is this separate post trials deal. We just need to look and see if the post trial, what would it be called? Post trial
trial type.
Trial type, if it's off or no, then
blank,
it doesn't load it.
Yeah.
Yeah, off, no, or blank, it should not do it. Let me write that down.
Well, you use 2 editors simultaneously?
Yeah, Sublime's easier to take notes in
Oh yeah, because you can just hit
because then
Control N.
yeah, and you can close it and not worry about having to save the file.
Yeah, I really like Sublime. I like it so much. It's one of the rare software packages I actually bought with my own money.
Yeah, and it's pretty expensive too, isn't it?
It's like $70. But I mean, I use it every day. It's fantastic.
So what are we gonna allow? Off, no,
Blank.
blank, nothing. Yeah, blank. So
We should
no.
probably make consistent sort of like off settings for the collector.
Yeah,
So
because I
whenever
was
we
thinking the pound sign
here-
might be a thing too, because we're using it elsewhere.
Well, the pound sign isn't that. It's not that it equals the pound sign. It's just that it contains the
Yeah.
pound sign. So that's a little tricky.
So wait, what? If
So-
it has a pound sign in there, you don't use it.
Yeah, well, so
Like
like
for
for shuffles. Yeah.
But if it starts with a pound sign,
No, if shuffles, if it has a pound sign anywhere in the name. So if it's like group 1 pound, then I say, okay, this is not going to be shuffled, but it's part of group 1.
Well, actually, we might as well just do it if it starts with this. Because then
Yeah.
we could just make it, the rule is that if it starts with any of these, then we treat it, I mean, obviously not blank. We could say if it's blank or it starts with any of these, we're considering it to be an offsetting of some type. For post trials, it means not a post trial. For shuffle, it means no, don't shuffle this.
I mean,
For
I'd be
settings.
worried because what if someone names their trial type like official something?
or
They
yeah,
make a trial type called,
I think
not
think
something.
if you put it as so, how about if we did this? If it is off, no, a null file, an empty string, false or equate or actually false. Or if it starts with a pound sign or the double slash. 'Cause
Like
these are
I don't know
both
if we need this
comments.
many rules to say off. Why don't we make the
Well,
rule that if it's off, it's off?
I think the rule should be off. This is mine here. I think it should be
Okay.
off
Yeah,
I
let's go
agree with
off.
that.
because
Now that I think about it, no makes sense as well.
no, I don't like that
Instead
one
of blank.
because if you search for it, it has to be only no. Then that's the thing.
Yeah, that's what
What
I'm
if you
saying.
just say if this trial type? No, I was gonna say if the trial type doesn't exist, skip it. But then
No, see, that's
if they make a
actually what I would
typo-
say. We used to do that, and we shouldn't do that because sometimes you make a typo, and
Yeah.
then it just says, "Oh, they meant
Yeah.
off." It's like, no, I meant VDR free recall, but I wrote free recall VDR, and
yeah, if I write statty instead of study, it'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, this never happens, and that could be disastrous for.
So off, no, or blank. Yeah.
That feels good to me.
Cool. Okay, so I'll add that in. And then so after it, I'm kind of skipping over a bit here. I'll go back and do it. But so it takes the experiment. It creates it with the condition, the stimuli, the validator directories. For every row in the procedure, it adds the main trial and then adds the post trials to the main trial. Remember that the post trials are not being added to the experiment, they're being added to the main trials. And then after that's done, I use this apply function that's available in experiment. And apply takes a callable function with the first parameter as the trial, and it runs through every trial in the experiment, and it applies whatever function you pass to it. In this case, I'm running through, and I'm running get trial type files for the trial type and adding it to a related files property in the trial. So that
Oh,
gets
so
like
you're-
scoring, display, etc., and adds it in.
wait. So this apply function gets run on every row?
It gets run on every trial, not on the rows.
Oh,
So this
okay.
is
So, that,
already added to the experiment.
so every trial, you're running the helpers get trial type files.
Yep.
Seems
But
like
this
you
is
could.
before it. This is on login, so I don't know.
Seems like you could just do one step before, do the trial type files equal to helpers get all trial type files, and then
Is that
you
a
can just,
thing? I didn't even know that was a function.
I'm pretty sure that is a function. I'll just double check it. So let's see, it's in classes helpers now, right? Get
Can
all.
look here.
Yeah, we have a get all
What
trial type files.
does it do?
Returns an array where the key is the trial type and the
All
element.
right. Yeah, I'll add that in then.
Just because.
Yeah, it'll make it faster. You're right. I just didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Because the get all or the get trial type files is not a fast. I mean, it's doing file exists, which means it's doing a ton of string corrections and directory scans, and it's not a fast function.
I remember at one point I was going to for each for something and do this exact logic, and Tyson's like, "I'll write a version that will keep track of things we've already looked for and not look for them again." It's like, all right. Then like a week later, or it was probably a day later, he's like, "Okay, get all trial type files. That will do it." Like, okay, awesome.
I mean, I know that it's slow considering. I mean, I wrote this to do here. It not only does it depend on Pathfinder, but I noticed it was going like a lot slower than it could be going. But I think you're right. I can just do the whole thing, grab everything, and then go from there. Though, well, I'll do that. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so
And so
I
you
do
said
that.
we're doing this for every trial, but does that include, does the trial know to talk about its post-trials? So if I
Yeah,
say
so
trial 1 and there's 4 post-trials attached, and I only use, you know, a certain trial type only appears in post-trials, will this thing pick up that, oh, I'm using study, even though it's never a main trial, it's always a post-trial?
yeah, so what this is going to do is this apply function, when used on experiment, if I just follow it down here. So this is the function that's being run. It's going to get the related files for this trial,
Yeah.
and then for each of the files, it adds the related file. Okay, so if I follow this down, I go to apply. You see that apply takes a closure and arguments that you can pass to the closure. And then it's going to actually go through every trial in the experiment and run main trial apply. So main trials also have an apply function. So if I follow that down again, come on, follow me down. Why can't I go? Here we go. Main trial apply. So if I go to main trial apply, you can see what it does. This is where it actually runs the stuff. So it gets the arguments from the arguments. It applies it to the current main trial here. Call user func array, the function, the parameters, and then it applies it to each of its post trials. So each time it's passing in the trial and running it.
So that's kind of nice.
So
the fact that the main trial knows to do this for its post trials, then we just have to think, well, apply to every main trial, and the main trial will handle applying it to its posts.
Yeah, if you wanted to use the apply. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look inside of the experiment. All right, so the big thing that this create function is using is this add trial absolute. So I'm just going to go in and start there. So when I run add trial absolute, what it's going to do is insert a main trial. Man, I wrote a lot here, and I even wrote a little deal here. So it inserts a main trial at the specified position, or if you don't give a position, it'll insert it at the end. So I'm just inserting them all one after another at the end of the trial, at the end of the experiment. And when it does that, it's going to check to see if the trial you pass to it is an array. In the case of the experiment factory, you are going to be passing an array. It's the procedure row array.
Okay.
With the post trials filtered out, and it'll create a new main trial from that array. Or if it's not an array, it's going to this should probably be else if it's a main trial or a trial, but it's going to try to use trial copy, and if it's not a main trial, it's not going to have that function. But I should probably fix this to only accept main trials. But
wait, so are post trials not sent in as an array?
Post trials are sent in as an array, but they're not added using add trial absolute. If you try to do that, it shouldn't let you. It should be, so this should actually be, I need to add that in to make sure that it only takes main trials and arrays. Okay, because you don't want to add a post trial to the experiment because it shouldn't be able to function on its own. That's just the thing you should not do. So anyway, it either adds the trial or it copies the trial, and copy is important because it removes all of the response variables and resets the position and all this kind of stuff. That if you just copied it, if you just kind of stuck one in there, it wouldn't work. And that's why it's also not possible for you to just like say, I want to shove a trial in at the end. You have to use an add trial function. You can't just add it to the trials array. It's protected. So
I
when I
remember
added,
when I tried to write a copy trials, and it never functioned, but it was in the repository for a long time. It might still be there. It was called like copy trial, and the contents were nothing.
Or wasn't it clean trial or something?
Oh yeah, maybe it was clean trial. I don't know. Let's see if it's still in there. Array cleaner though.
no, I think it's deleted out of
No,
there.
yeah, I think you got rid of it a little while ago, Mikey.
Okay, so that's good. But yeah, that thing. I had that idea, but never actually did it.
So this is kind of cool. Well, yeah. So the copy function. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. It's pretty cool. But this creates a new main trial. And when you create a new main trial, you have to pass it. You can pass it nothing again. It usually needs an experiment to run. So I put it in here. It's easier to test it with it in this order. I can put it back in the logical order with experiment first. Doesn't really matter. But you pass it in data, and it constructs data. It constructs the main trial from the data. So it initializes with null for the position. The post position is 0. Post trials is an empty array, and it creates a mini. It runs its parent constructor, which I'll show you that in a few minutes. Shit gets kind of complicated, let me tell you. They keep a lot in mind, but the reason it's complicated here is so that on the outside, it's really easy to just run files and experiment knows what to do with it. Okay, so you're running experiment factory. It's creating a new main trial for every row in the procedure, and it's shoving everything in. And then after it adds the trial, it sets the experiment for the trial to this experiment. Okay, so I'm adding the trial in here, and it's creating a new main trial with nothing. Well, it's not. I could put the experiment here, but I'm just adding it at the same place for everything, just in case, because this one needs to be reset. If I'm just adding a new trial in, I can add it from another experiment if I want, but every time you add it to this experiment, it's going to make sure that it's only ever pointing to this experiment. And that's important because the main trial periodically refers back to its experiment holder class for things like getting the stimuli it needs and stuff like that. After it adds the experiment, it adds it into the trials array, and then it's going to update the positions. So I said here, when I initialize a main trial, the position is null. That's because the experiment's going to tell it what position it is. You don't want it to put it in there at like 4, and then there's 2 4s.
Yeah.
So it just creates it null. And even if it was 4, this update positions will go through the trials array, and it'll just reorder everything. So that's kind of important to remember. If you add a trial somewhere in the middle of your experiment, you can't reference. You're not going to be able to reference the rows from your procedure file because you're adding stuff in the middle.
So it's like doing an insert in an Excel sheet where you're like, I added a thing ahead of me and everything bumps up by 1.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to remember that you did that and get everything by a relative array, which is easy to do too.
Although, I mean, it looks like add trial absolute always, unless you pass in position, it just adds it to the end, right?
Yes. Though there are other, so there's an add trial absolute because there is an add trial as well, which adds it at the next position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
For anything that says absolute, that's the main function that's run. But there's always one that doesn't say absolute. So like add trial doesn't have absolute there, and what that does is it does the same thing. It's going to call add trial absolute, but it's going to give you the position plus whatever offset it gives you. So the current position plus the offset you give it, defaulting to 1, so the next position. But you can give it -1 or whatever.
So this could actually be really nice in that if I want to do loops, I can just write a trial type that says, okay, go back 10 trials, copy them all, and now do add trial for all the things I copied.
In fact, you can do better than that. You can go back 10 trials, get all 10 trials, and then just add them in using add trials.
Will it add in the entire row, so you'll get your post trials with them as well?
So if you're getting it from the experiment, those main trials should have post trials attached to them. And so, yeah, when you add it in, it's going to have the post trials there.
So the trial it's adding is the main trial.
Yes, but the main trial holds post trials.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, the way it's thinking about it when you're adding it, it's like, well, I'm going to grab that main trial, and if it has post trials,
Yeah.
are coming with it.
Yeah. Not sure if I did that or not. Okay. So that's all about how you create an experiment. That's stuff you probably won't need to use 90% of the time. Um, Doing loops is a obvious use for it, and it's pretty easy to do that. If you just go back a couple trials, and what you do is you'd say, let me find the function here, get trial, like maybe get trial minus 10, or this is kind of cool. I can use get trials, and the way I do that is actually use this string to range kind of deal that we already have kind of in use in other places.
Yeah.
So I can go get trials -10 dash -1, and it'll get everything from 10 back to 1 back.
Although
And it'll,
dashes are going to be, well, I guess if we're doing it in code here, right?
oh yeah, dash wouldn't work for negatives. That's right. But it can do it with so string to range.
Hmm.
It can do it with colons too.
Okay, so we'll just use colons.
Yeah, maybe I should change it to not use dash and just use colons because yeah, negative would be kind of weird.
Well, I
Um,
mean, the reason that we avoid hyphens is just because Excel always tries to read it as a date. If you write like 7-11, it
yeah, okay,
changes to an Excel timestamp.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be like, oh, July 11th this year. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like, no, 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 Excel. Just want the raw characters I typed. That's why I typed them.
You can also do with string to arrange. You can do 2:4, comma 6:8, comma 12, and it'll get all of those.
I mean, that's how it's always worked, right?
I don't know. I rewrote it again because I didn't.
Okay.
I wanted it to be encapsulated within this experiment sort of thing, so that I knew it would always work in my tests, and I wouldn't have to worry about whether someone changed it somewhere else. I know it probably won't change anywhere else, but I just rewrote it, so it's easy to do. Okay, so you can go back and get trials and add them in, but most of the stuff I think that people are going to use, like 90% of everything, is going to be a few functions. Those are going to be add, get, update, export, and maybe advance, skip, and then record.
Wait, what's the
And those
difference
are
between advance and skip?
so advance goes to the next trial, including post trials. Skip goes to the next main trial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it marks everything as complete as you go by it. So
So you can basically use post trials as like a loop. Like, okay, if you get it wrong, you're going to get another post. And then you just, in your scoring, go, if this is correct, skip. So, like, okay, don't run the next
oh yeah,
5 test cycles.
yeah. If you had post trial, yeah. So maybe you set up a post trial where it's like, all right, before I run, I'm gonna make a copy of myself and put it after. And if
Yeah.
you get it wrong, I'm gonna run that. Otherwise, we'll skip to the next thing. You could write it that way, yeah. Okay, so add, get, update, export are all parts of what I wrote this little mini DB sort of thing. I'm gonna go to that real quick because almost everything extends this mini DB.
Yeah, I looked at the sort of object hierarchy and everything was pointing at it.
Yeah. That's because I wanted everything to kind of have a similar usability. Like you should know that it will always have these sort of things. So if we think about it, like all the way at the base, main trials, post trials, etc., will always have add, get, update, export on them. And what add does is it will add a key if it doesn't already exist. It will return true if it was added, false if it wasn't added. So if you try to add key 1 and there is no key 1, it'll add key 1 to the data array and it'll return true. If you try to add it again, it won't add it and it won't change the value. It'll just return false. If you want to add it or overwrite it if it exists, so you don't care what the actual value is now, you use update, and that'll just shove it in there. If you want to get something, you use get. If you want to export, this is going to export the data array and it'll default to exporting an array format, but you can also ask it for a JSON. I'm probably going to write an HTML table output one, but I haven't done it yet. I had Derek write me something. I haven't tried it yet. I told him, write me a table thing, and he wrote it.
Nice.
Oh,
So,
just one thing.
yeah.
But for the JSON pretty print, that's only 5.4 and up. So maybe just
Yeah.
put like a if it's available, use it. Otherwise,
I think that if it's not available, it just doesn't do anything, right?
no, it gives you an error.
It errors. Yeah, it goes like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Are we supporting 5.4 or 5.3? Because it's kind of like so many little things we have to remember.
I mean, what are the big differences between 5.3 and 5.4?
You can use short array syntax in 5.4, and it'll break in 5.3. You can use something like this, so you can run a function in 5.4, say we use experiment, and we get something, and we know that maybe item or something like this is going to return an array, and I can just go and start getting the thing that I want from the array. I can do that in 5.4, but I'm pretty sure it breaks in 5.3. In fact, my IDE is probably going to tell me it would break, except I changed it because it was annoying me. So you can't do this. You'd have to return this value and then get the array. Pretty print, a few other things. I think you can do anonymous functions in 5.3, which is essential for this, for the validators. But I mean, it doesn't matter. Like we can go through and I can make the changes.
I really have been wanting some way to scan a PHP like a PHP project and give me back what is our compatibility. Like it would be nice if there's some way to do
that.
Oh, wait, you know how to do that? Do it now.
Well, what I can do is, I mean, it's a little more than that, but I can just set my project settings here, and let's see, where am I? If I set my project setting, I put it at 5.4, but if I change it to 5.3,
it'll show errors for like you can't do this.
Yeah, so like if I try to use short array syntax, like this. It'll give me a little, oh, you can't do this in 5.3.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It won't catch everything. Obviously, pretty print slipped through the cracks, but.
So I would say we can do the anonymous functions in 5.3. We know that, and the rest of the features are convenience features.
Yeah.
And it would be a shame to tell a university, like for example, UT is on 5.3. So it would be a shame to say you can't use this on your servers because it makes our functions a little inconvenient to write.
I mean, settings.php has a canPrettyPrint function, which is one line long. Like here is a.
What do I do? How do I do it? I'll put it in right now.
So go to settings.php. Well, it's kind of annoying. It's an annoying line, but I'll show you. So go to settings.php, line 283.
Where's?
It's in classes, I think.
But it's a protected function. How do I even?
Oh no, yeah, I can change that. I mean, you could just change it to something else. But I'm just saying you can copy that line, because that line is doing everything right there. It's just doing a version compare. Like, are you less than 5.4? If so, true. If not, false.
All right, yeah, I'll just add that in right now. So, what do you mean it's not a pretty line? I like this line.
I mean, it's not a pretty line to say out loud to you.
Oh. Okay.
Like, it's not like, if this is equal to something, do that. It's like return, version, compare, PHP. Yeah, it's annoying.
And return, version compare, PHP. Yes, it's true. We're going to do JSON encode pretty print. Otherwise, we'll just JSON encode.
I didn't realize you can use returns like that to just basically execute arbitrary code.
Well, it's in a switch.
Oh, that's why.
So instead of instead of setting a value to something or whatever, running code, I'm just returning based on the switch results. I'll probably put in a HTML table one too, but there you go. Happy now, Tyson? Okay,
I
so
am. Thank you.
MiniDB. Yeah, no problem, man. MiniDB. Okay, so add, update. So add, get, update, export. Those are like the main ideas behind them. Add something if it doesn't exist. Update, we'll put it where if it doesn't care. Get something, and exports the MiniDB array. Now, that being said, that's mostly true. The experiment and the main trial and the post trial do a lot of stuff to help you. Meaning, if I go to experiment and I try to add something, it adds it to the current trial. It doesn't add it to the experiment. Okay?
Oh, wait, so what does that mean? It adds it as a post trial, or it just adds a new?
So in this case, we're just adding values to something that could be exported. So like, let me show you a place where I use it. Login.php. No, experiment.php, sorry. Which I think we should change this one, but the name of this one, because it gets confusing. So in experiment.php, not the class. Scroll down here. So where the hell did I use? So here's the spot where I use it. So line 85.
85, all right.
Okay, so starting at line 71, we're going through and updating any text. So what I do is I go text equals, sorry, line 72, not 85. I go text equals experiment get text. So experiment, the class, doesn't actually have anything in its data array. And it doesn't matter because it's not, the get function is not going to try to get text from the experiment. It's going to try to get it from the current trial.
Okay, so experiment's just the overarching.
Like a shell, yeah. And it will figure out for you, oh, I need to get it from, and so what it does is it passes get here. Let's see what get's doing. So if I go to experiment, PHP, and I look at get, it's actually going to get the current trial, and if it's set, it's going to try to get from that trial. Otherwise, it'll return null. And so it'll go to the current main trial, and it'll run get on it. So let's go to the main trial and see what get does there. So if we go to main trial and I scroll down to get, you can see what it does now is it does a little complicated thing, but the first thing it does is it tries to get it from the parent. So the parent in this case is the MiniDB so main trial is a MiniDB, and so when I run parent, it's running get from the MiniDB that is main trial. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the MiniDB is basically the data structure of the trial.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, underneath main trial. So it tries to get it from itself first.
Okay.
If we run get with the strict call here, and that's kind of important. If I run it with strict, it will return the value only for this main trial. So only if it exists in this main trial, it will be returned. If it's false, so meaning it won't look anywhere else, it's only going to try to get it from itself. If I call it with strict as true. If I call it with strict as false, it's going to say, oh, I don't really care if I found the value in myself. I need to make sure first that I'm not in a post trial. So it tries to figure out if it's inside of a post trial. If it is, then I'm going to see if the post trial has the value with the name I'm trying to get. Say we're trying to get text in this case. So I look for text in main trial. If it's strict, I return it. In this case, it's not strict. It's going to say, oh, well, let me see if I'm in a post trial. If I'm in a post trial, try to get text from the post trial. If it is set in the post trial, return that value. Otherwise, return the value that I found in myself, which is either going to be the value for text or a null deal. So at this point, value is either equal to post value, text, the value, the main trial value for text, or null. And then down here it's going to say, well, if the value is set, so not null, return it. Otherwise, finally, try to look inside the response for this trial. Lots of stuff there. So the response is something we haven't even talked about yet, but we'll get to in a minute.
So if the response hasn't happened yet, then that thing is empty and it'll always return. Like if I'm doing this at the display and there's no response yet.
Right. If you haven't, so response is only updated when you use the record function.
Okay.
So if you haven't run record, it's just going to try to get it from itself or the post trial, or the post trial's response. Because inside post trial we also have a get function, which is going to look inside itself. Do the same. It's kind of the same logic. Look inside myself. If I can't find it there, then it actually tries to fall back to the main trial and see if it's there. And if it can't find it in the main trial, it tries to get it from its own response.
Okay.
All right, that makes sense. So that's the same. That same logic is what happens when you try to add something or update it. It will always, if you pass strict, it'll try to add it only to itself, or update only itself. It doesn't really make sense for update because it would just add it to itself. But yeah, if that makes sense.
Okay, so here's a use case I'm thinking of. What if I want to get a thing that exists in both main trial and post trial? Like I want to specify I have settings and I have post 1 settings, and I want to get one of those.
Yeah. So the way I would tell you to do that is now you're doing something complicated, so you better be prepared for that.
Okay.
So that's the number one thing there, okay? You better know how to use the darn thing if you're going to try to do something like that. But it's not too bad. So what I would say is you're in display, right? So say we're in display.php.
Yeah.
You can see what I'm typing, right? So if we're in display.php, I might, so I know that there's two variables that I can use right now. I have experiment, which is going to be the full experiment, and trial, which is actually the current trial.
Mm-hmm.
This is the current main trial, I believe. I need to make sure. I might rename this to main trial if it is. If it's the current main trial or post trial, then I'll leave it how it is, but I can't remember what it is right now. But what I'd say is the foolproof way. Experiment, I'd say you said you want to get the value for the settings in main trial and the value for the settings in post trial 1, right?
Yeah, for some reason I want to compare them.
Okay, yeah, so what I'd do is I'd go value post trial, main trial, value main trial equals experiment, and then you can go get trial. That's going to get you the current main trial.
Yeah.
Is what get trial does, the current main trial, not the post trial. And then I would go, so actually I would store this first. Trial equals get trial, right? Okay. And then I would be like, okay, I want the settings main equals trial get settings. And we'll just set it to true to make sure that it only returns the settings for this trial.
Okay.
No matter what post trial we're in, it's going to get you the main trial settings because I.
Yeah, you said don't look any further. Like if it's not in my initial trial, give up, or give me no.
So that's the easy way to do that. And then what I can do is I can actually go settings post 1 equals. I'll go trial. I'll go get post trial. If I put in 0, that returns the current main trial because that's post trial 0.
Yeah.
If I put in 1, that's post trial 1, and this is actually going to return the post trial, and so I can actually just keep going here and say get settings, and again true to make sure that it only stays in the post trial 1.
Okay, that's not even that complicated. I can follow the idea of grabbing a trial and pulling stuff from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the current trial? Like whether I'm on post 0 or post 1, how do I just get the current trials settings column?
Okay. So the current trial, if you just go get settings,
and true.
There you go. If you wanted if you wanted to make sure you only get it from this deal, you would go get settings true.
It's like that's what we would be using
Actually,
most of the time, right?
this wouldn't work. This would only I don't know if that would work, but oh god, now
Like
I
if
gotta
I
look
have
at
a
it.
trial type that is expecting a column frame, and
Yeah, yeah,
if I want it to work as either a main trial or a post trial, but I just always want to get that level's main or frame column, what do I do?
yeah. Let me make sure. I'm seeing what this does. So
So you're
if I
saying you have a
run
frame and a post one frame?
Yeah, and I only want to get post one frame
for the
if I'm
current,
at yeah.
yeah. So like this, get
Okay.
settings true, because what this will do is it'll run get, and so get gets the current trial first, and current could be a post trial.
Okay. Cool.
So we don't
And
have to do these contingent, like if I'm in a post trial, there's different rules for how we get stuff.
And so
no,
this is
yeah, you
similar in
can,
your example to like experiment get trial get current,
yeah.
then doing get
Yeah,
setting.
the
Okay.
long way to do this would be experiment, get current, and then
Okay.
get settings
Okay. Interesting.
true. So these are equivalent.
Hmm.
Um, if you
So
wanted
the
to know
logic
whether
of
you're in a
post trials and trials are kind of nice in that I can, if I do get without true, it'll just look through all levels. Basically, it's
yeah,
scanning that row. Like, does he have anything that looks like it was a setting? Or if I
exactly,
say
yeah.
true, it's like give it to me only for this level. So don't search in post two. Like post two has its own settings, and I want them to be distinct from post one. I want them
What
to
you said
also be
is
distinct
mostly
from trial.
true. Unfortunately, it won't just scan the whole row. What it would do is it would, so if you're in a post, say you're in post trial 2, it won't search post trial 1. It'll only search post trial 2 in the main trial.
Oh, okay. So I'd have to search specifically the other post trials if I wanted to.
Yeah, I think we could change it to do that if you think that's how you'd rather it be. I just kind of wrote in terms of what I was thinking, but I don't know what's very useful in this case.
Um, I mean, the cases where you'd want to get those specific, like, I'm on post two and I want post one's value, that it seems like to me you shouldn't. If I'm in
Yeah,
post two and I want to get settings and I don't have it, and it shouldn't look in post one settings, that doesn't make any
right.
sense. There's
Yeah,
no case when I intended those settings to also apply to post two.
that's what I kind of figured. I
But in
figured
general,
if you wanted it common to everything, you just put it in the main trial.
Yeah.
That's me.
yeah, I guess. I was thinking that in general we would want this strict defaulting to true because I don't normally think that I could have like MC pick expecting settings to pull from not itself but to pull from main.
Yeah.
Oh,
I guess there could be the case where like, oh yeah, my main trial isn't using a settings, but I don't have to type post one settings if I just throw it in settings and then my trial type will know just to look. But it seems weird to me. It seems like the trial type should be a little bit more independent than that, and you can make them flexible by explicitly saying, oh no, go ahead and look for main trial, but the default should just be looking for its own data.
yeah.
I would kind of agree with that.
I I wasn't sure. 90% of the time, whenever I write something, you guys want it to be more flexible. So I wrote it the most flexible with the option to make it super strict.
I mean, which
But
is good because we're throwing these weird oddball cases at you, and you have ways to do them.
so the easiest way to do that, I mean, I can just go through here and just change strict to true in all these cases, and uh, I think it's only in one situation. Like so, if you do experiment add, it's going to add it to the current trial, and that makes sense. It's not going to add it to the main trial. It'll add it to whatever the current one is. If it's the main trial, then it'll add it there. Same thing for update. For get, that's the only one that strict really matters,
Yeah.
where I'd want to change that to true, which is, yeah, I think that's fine. I guess I was thinking of settings being the one where I would put most things there, but no, that makes sense. Yeah, I can just change it to true. I mean, there you
So
go.
And
you're
then in the
thinking that,
cases where we really want to scan everything, we can just say false.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
and then
those
you
two.
were saying that it'll search the procedure column and responses, but not stimuli.
1 second. It does do that.
Okay, if I wanted it to only search basically my inputs, like I want it to search both my stimuli and my procedure, but not my responses, can I do that?
No. If you want to do that, you have to do it yourself, sort of thing. And you can do that. So I'll show you. I'll show you how to do that. You can't use this function to do it. That's all.
Okay.
But I could get the current trial and basically pull it apart into its constituent pieces and then search those, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I'm expecting. I never want to use responses as an input. Like, I want to be able to say, I want to get settings, and settings should never be a response. I'm expecting settings to be something that they typed into an Excel file and I loaded at login.
But I think so. For me, what the reason I kind of like that it searches responses is that we can tell people in your scoring file you can. Here's how you can read responses more easily, right? Or actually, no, because they're
Yeah,
not saved
you can
yet.
just do experiment get input, whatever you called it on the page.
Yeah.
Man, I forgot how actually it's even more complicated and how it does the get than that. I'm just gonna now that you have that in mind, I'm gonna show you. Remember how I said parent goes to minidb?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually. Main trial and post trial are descendants of trial, which
Okay.
is a descendant of minidb. So trial actually has another kind of complicated thing. It looks for, it checks to see whether it has the value, but then it also checks within the stimuli
Uh-huh.
to see if it can find it there. So if you ask for Q, it'll find it, even though that was on a different file than procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it knows to always reference its relevant stimuli. Like if it's like you ask for Q,
Yeah.
it's not in your procedure, but I know I'm pointing at, row 10
Yeah.
of the stimuli, and that has a Q.
Yeah, if you so stimuli kind of get it was the most complicated thing to write, I think for in terms of the getting. If you try to get item, it won't return the number. It'll return the array from the stimuli sheet. Does that
Okay.
make sense? So it'll return the row, the array of values from the stimuli row that you're trying to get instead of the number.
Mm-hmm.
That's only if you ask for item and the item is a number. If the item is not a number, it will return the value there. So if you have, for instance, a survey sheet, that's a string, and it's not going to evaluate to numeric, so it'll
What about if
return the
the item
string
is
for you.
ranged? Like for item, I said it's 2 to 4. It's 2 : 4.
Oh, I forgot to. I forgot to make that available. I remember wanting to do that and forgetting to do it. So let me put that in here. We're talking about trial, get, and we want to be able to do string to range for stimuli.
Yeah, I guess
Good
it's a little
point.
complicated. What you would do is, items is equal to string to range of that number, and then
And
if
you get
all
all
of
the
those are
stimuli.
numeric, because
Well, it wouldn't be if all of them were numeric. It would be if string to range doesn't fail, basically, then go on. But yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I
Okay.
forget that your string to range is different from my range to array.
Yeah. So basically, if for the string to range, if it isn't a valid string that can be converted to a range, it'll just return null, and you can check it that way. That's
So yours can only actually. Can we just have a look at your string to range function?
Yeah, it's a static function inside experiment, so you can actually use it anywhere. Um, but what it oh, it actually doesn't return null now. It would just fail. So I need to fix that. String to range only colon double colon and return
Actually,
null on fail.
over here.
Okay, so yeah, the string to range, what it does is so right now it's going to replace all the dashes for double colons, so I need to just remove that functionality so that you can use negative numbers. And then it explodes and it replaces all semicolons with commas and all spaces with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and then it explodes by comma. So you can see in the kind of example up here, if I put in 4 semicolon space 6 comma space 8 double colon 9, and then 11, and then we could just pretend this is double colon 13. This is going to return 4, 6, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13. And it just does it by replacing everything all spaces with no spaces, all commas with semicolons, all double colons there, and then it breaks by comma, and then does creates a range for anything that has a double semicolon in it. Then it merges the arrays together and returns the values as an array.
Okay, cool. Is there a reason that you included the replacing semicolon with commas, or is it just in case people want to define it differently?
It's pretty common in the UK to use semicolons, so I just threw it in there.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Damn. So we just barely got through get. Let me tell you how long it took me to write and test that. The tests are out of control. That's like half the code was writing the tests for this stuff. And it's just like me sitting there thinking, what would someone try to do with this? And writing a test to make sure it could do that. And here we go. Okay, so we did get, update and add. We'll add to the current situation. What are other important things? Oh, record. So, God, there's so many functions here. Let's go to record. So record is what I think we should tell people to use. So if you want to record data, you can just use add and update, right? And it will just add them as new columns when it exports the experiment. Does that make sense? When you're using add and update, the
So you don't have a
become
subarray, it's not trial responses RT is this, it's just trial RT is this?
Let me show you. When you go, let's see, how would I do this? Let's go to login. Before we leave login, why don't I do a few things here? Let's go ahead and we'll go experiment, add, new key, some value, new key, and then the value as 5. That'll be me adding new key. And then I'll go ahead and I'll do how you use record too. Record takes an array, only an array, and it'll fail if you don't give an array. But the array is just going to be an array of key values. So we'll actually call this new key as well, just to show why you would want to use record and not anything else. New key is equal to 5. We'll call it 7. Okay, and then I'm just going to use Kint to dump this and exit by using D. And we'll go to that page here. All right, Teet, so much. Accident. Okay, here we go. So I dumped the experiment at the end after I added and stuff to it. So what we'll see here is that, again, it doesn't add anything to the experiments data array because it's adding to the current trial. So if I go in here and I click trials, I go to the first trial because we haven't advanced yet, and I can see this data array has 7 things in it. It has all of the things that were loaded in the procedural trial that weren't prefixed with post 1 or post 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we have new key, integer 5. Note that this is not 7, right? Because the 7, when I clicked record, it was added to the response mini-DB's data array.
Okay, so then in experiment, you're recording the data variable we make inside the scoring files, right? Like, we sort of turn all the stuff into one array, and then you can just say record that array.
Yeah, so let me actually show you that in a second. So I just want to show you first that this is adding new key in both places, and that's possible. But this later is going to be, this will not be prefixed by response when it's output. I tried to keep the output, I tried to match it to what was already there so that Tyson wouldn't have to change get data too much. But let me show you the export array now. So we'll go PDD experiment.
Presumably, are you not writing a CSV file anymore? Like at the
it still is. It still is.
Oh, because then I was
Yeah.
thinking, like, I don't actually touch any of the
Okay.
code. Like, I don't look and experiment things. I don't look at JSONs. I just look at the CSV and load it up and prepend everything with a exp underscore, and I shove it out through get data.
Okay, cool. Um, so if I run experiment export, you'll see that it exports the condition information, the stimuli information, and the information for the trials. If I click trials here, there's an array for each trial. First trial, or sorry, there's an array for each trial, and then that's broken into main. And if it has a post, there would be one called post one, and there'd be one called post two. None of these have post trials. And then within main, you can see here, it's outputting new key, and then the responses are in their own response array, because that's exporting as well. So when I call export on experiment, it goes through and it finds like all the trials, and all the trials are also mini DBs, and it calls export on those. And responses are also mini DBs, so it recalls export on those, but they're in their own arrays. And so when I actually output to, it would be in experiment require, I think, is where it records a line. That function, record trial, which I didn't change the name of. When it runs, it's going to go through, add all the stuff it usually did before, and then it's going to go through and add the prefixes with the stars, like we already have it. So, or like it was before. I don't know what it is currently, but it was like this before, where it would go through and it'd be like, in this case, it would be item would become main star item, main star trial type, main star max time, and then the response from main would be main star response star new key. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So that's how that would be exported to the CSV later as the flat single array. So that's why I think that's why you should use the record, so that you don't accidentally override one of your settings that you passed in through the procedure, and so that you're sure that this is something that was recorded. It's in the response, and it'll have the response star before it. So yeah, and right now everything is recorded that way. I think I tried to go through all of the scoring. So default scoring has it so that response is recorded. So at least that is, and then any other places you just have to make sure that you use record.
I mean, couldn't we, for the scoring files, wouldn't we just use the same strategy where you're populating a data variable, and then after that include runs out, we just say, okay, take the data variable, for each it. Like, we don't leave that up to them because they might mess it up or we
Doesn't
might change how we
actually.
do it.
I think it actually. I can't remember exactly how that works, but I remember if it pops back a data. Yeah, let me just check right here. I know it's like right. It's in experiment.php, and then near the top, I moved. Yeah, okay. So post is non-array. Yeah, data is here. Experiment record data.
Yep.
Done. And then it does the advanced logic. And if we're done with that full post trial, if all the post trials are done in that main trial, it records the line and updates the trial reference, advances to the next bit. It's complete, goes to done. Okay, man, throat's getting sore.
So just looking at this part, so after you finish recording data, you don't redirect?
Nope. Only redirect if the experiment is done. Oh wait, yeah, actually, so yeah, I don't remember what the logic was, but it wasn't working, so I twiddled with it until it worked.
Okay, but the redirect on finding that post is not empty was deliberate, so that if they refresh the page, it doesn't resubmit data. Like, I deliberately redirect after any post comes in because I don't want posts to exist.
Sorry, I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, basically, if they submit data. You know, they finish a trial. I deliberately record it and then redirect. So if we're not doing that, that means that they can refresh the page and it'll try and resubmit all that post data, and you can end up skipping trials. There, I'll just test it on my own and see if that's actually what's going on.
Let me just, yeah, I think I know what you're saying. I just can't work through it, how it would happen in my head and how to fix it here.
Well, just if you've gotten to the point where you're recording, like basically I just say if post is not empty, record it and then header redirect to the same page.
Can you just tell me what you would do to try to break it? And then I'll do that and see if
refresh
it
the page after a post, like post, post a trial, and then
try breaking it on my own just right now.
Because every time you refresh, it'll resubmit your post because it refreshes whatever you did last, and what you did last was submit a post to experiment.
Okay, so I'm in a JLL trial. I type in 100, and I hit submit, and then it goes to the next trial.
Here, I'll just share my screen. I'll show you. I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah. How do I go to that?
All right, let me present Tyson to everyone. There we go.
So if I'm going to do multiple choice. So here I've got this thing. I click second, and then if I click refresh, it'll be like, oh, do you want to do something? And I'm actually, whatever I clicked for that first option, I'm going to submit.
Went through the trial there.
Yeah. That's why I
submitted and recorded.
That's why you have to wipe out post data. Because if they click back, because they're like, oh wait, I want to go change my answer. They click back, they click refresh, they do anything, it's just going to resubmit the old post data. But experiment thinks you're on the current trial. It's like, oh, you submitted 5 to me again. So you have to wipe out the post data.
So what you're saying is, right here I go, if post is not empty, go through, get the data, record, and then don't advance here? I would do the header redirect right here.
I mean, it's basically, no matter what happens, you have to redirect after finding post data. Whether it means going to the next row or going to the next post trial, you still have to end up with a redirect.
Okay.
Yeah, so you record the data, advance to the next trial. Although, what does advance do? Does advance have its own?
This advance
is that just updating the data inside of experiment? It's not actually like forcing a refresh or anything.
Basically, the logic is, you know, if you have post data, record it, figure out what your next trial is, whether it's the next post trial, whether it's the next main trial, or whether you should go to done, and then depending on that, either go to done or go to like just refresh back to experiment, and then that'll load. Like, okay, I have no post data. I can load the current trial, which I set to be either the next post trial or the next trial.
So actually, what I need to, it's actually really easy what to do. So this I changed to not equals. This I put here. And this I put outside the if statement. And now it does what you want, right? That seem right to you? Because now what it's doing is, so what it was doing before was saying, what it returns here is experiment advance. If it returns 1, it means that it changed to a new main trial. If it returns 0, it means it advanced, but it's still inside the same trial.
Okay.
So what I was doing, I was waiting until, so this should be equals 1. So if I go to a new trial, I want to write this trial to line. Yeah.
Yep, that looks like it'll work then.
And then if I haven't gone to a new trial, don't write it to line yet. We're just going to redirect to this page again. And
so that's how we lose the post data, is that we're redirecting right back at experiment, now without post on it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now I'm just going to hope that this works later when I try it.
I mean, it looks like it would work.
Yeah, there was something weird happening for a while where closures were not working in my... It was a whole thing. So I changed a few things until I figured out what the real problem was, and then I couldn't remember all the things I changed. It worked, but I don't know if this will work. I think it will. It looks like it'll work. Yeah, that's why you make a billion commits. I know, I should do that too. Okay. Where the fuck were we? We did recording. Okay, recording. Now it's kind of like it. We're done with that. We can go on to the next thing. There are only a few other things that I really wanted to point out. The experiment is countable if you want, and you can check the current position. So you can always go. You can always check to see if the experiment's done by doing something, or like see how far you are to the end by doing something like count to get the full number, and then ask for the public property position, which is the only public property, which is dangerous because you can just update position at any time, and it won't. And you get advanced by doing this. You could just put experiment count and then change the position to 100 or whatever, and then it would be like, oh, it must be done, because we're far past all the stuff. But I just thought it was silly to have a get set function that literally does nothing else. Anyway.
Yeah, because essentially if they're at that point and they're, it is their experiment. If they want to just change a trial to 100 and let them do it.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can just you can check to see if you're done by doing something like if the position is one less than the count, then you're done, right? You're on the last trial. Or you can just ask the experiment. You can do its experiment is complete, and it will check to see, first of all, if we are at the last trial, and if we are at the last trial, tell me if the trial is complete. If we're not, then tell me if the position is greater than the amount of trials that we have, because then we must be finished as well.
Okay.
If something went wrong, and you don't want to get an infinite loop sort of thing going. The other things are, if you want to get specific things, you can do it. Like, for instance, you can do get response, and that will get the response only for the current trial.
Mm.
So, like, if you want to check if something's in response and only in response, you just do experiment get response or trial get response or whatever, right?
Looking at that, you have like the default value of name is null. Would you ever do get response open close parens?
So yeah, that would give you the full response object.
So the whole array.
It's not an array, it's an object. So here's response. It's a mini DB object with an add, an update, and it actually has another function here, seal. Seal makes the response object read only. Once you mark a trial as complete, or you advance past it, or you skip past it, it seals the response so that you can't accidentally record something to a trial that hasn't been shown to anyone, or it's already been shown and there's no way someone could have responded to it. Does that make sense? So you can't, one thing that you can't do is you can't run, for instance, queue, and then 4 trials later go get trial, record some data that happened 4 trials later. You'd have to add it, you'd have to record it on the current trial. You can't record something to something that happened already. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, I understand it.
Does it seem unnecessary?
I guess it seems like if that's what you're trying to do, then you must have some reason, but...
I don't remember why I wrote it right now.
Well, yeah, it looks like something that if we need to change later, it would just be changing some flag to not. So that's fine.
Literally, all you'd have to do is delete a few lines here and there. I don't know. I don't remember what the real reason was when I wrote it, but it's probably seemed really important at the time. But if you do call experiment get response without the without passing a name to it, so you can pass like name like key new key, and it would return 7 in this case. It would, because it would only look in the response when we recorded 7 there. Cool. Or you could just return. I mean, why don't I just do it? And it'll return the full object. So returns the response object with the data, and it says it's not read-only. You can write anything you want to it right now. Gives you the available methods if you want. Okay.
So when does it get sealed? When is it turned read-only?
So if I just went advanced right here.
Okay, so the advanced function does it.
Yeah, when you advance past it, or you can, another thing you could do is mark it complete, which is used by, it sets it as complete, but whenever you set something as complete, it also seals it. Oh, I broke something. Undefined method, experiment mark complete. Oh, that's because you can't mark the experiment complete, you mark the trial complete.
But like in practice, the way it's currently set up is the sealing happens just on experiment advance.
Yeah. I don't know what I did here. I did something silly. But yeah. Yeah, when you advance along the way, you would it would seal it up. There you go. Collect a response. Oh well, I advanced, so I'd get the last response, but yeah. The current one is false, but you can see that there's no data in it because we're on the next one. Okay, so that's getting the response, and you can do the same thing for getting stimuli. You can get specific stimuli, specifically from the stimuli. You can do that, like get stimuli, and you can use string to range here to get a bunch of different stimuli. I just need to reword get to actually pass a string of stimuli to get stimuli instead of whatever it's doing right now.
Yeah, I noticed an error on multiple choice pick just now. I was trying to test some stuff. Line 59, we were saying $_trial and then using the array notation to pull out stimuli, and it says cannot use object of type collector main as array.
Yeah.
On line 59.
That's in which one?
Multiple choice pick display file, line 59.
So if I run multiple choice pick, I'll run into that error.
Yeah, you should.
Right.
Although mine, I'm getting weird errors, which I think is just independent of other stuff.
All right, I'll try that, but I'm pretty sure it's probably because you're using multiple items. Okay. All right, and then you can get a specific stimulus. You can get a range of stimulus. You can get all the stimuli. That's an array. You can get the condition information, which returns the condition array. And then the last thing is validators. I believe that's the last thing. I'm scanning through the trials here, and I'm not seeing anything else. Let me just make sure. We went through all these. We went through all of these. Yeah, the validators and the get-related files, but that's all kind of behind the scenes. Okay, validators. Validators are lovely things. Where do I create these bad boys? Okay. Okay, so when I run in login, man, I got so many things open here. Let me close a few. Okay, when I'm in login and I run the validate function, which is just after I initialize the experiment, I go experiment validate and pass any errors into validation errors. What it does is it goes through and it says, okay, I'm going to start my errors array, and for every trial, we're going to validate the trial. And so this trials property is all the main trials in the experiment. I'm going to go through it for each trial and run validate on it. When I run validate, go to that thing. Main trial, validate. Here we go. It's going to start its own errors thing here too. And it's going to load the validator. In this case, it's going to say, this experiment, get validator, this data trial type. So it's going to get its own trial type from the data variable. So first off, that is the only thing for trials. So this part right here, this one line, makes the only dependence or the only requirement for creating a trial. It has to have a trial type.
Which makes sense. If you don't have a trial type,
Yeah.
we have no idea what you're doing.
Exactly. So, but this is the only line that actually enforces something like that, because it specifically tries to get trial type from the data array, and if it wasn't added, then or if it had the column was spelled wrong with a space or whatever, it just won't work. Oh shit! What did I do? Okay. Aside, it's going to try to get the validator using experiment get validator, and so that's here. What it does is it says, have we already tried to load this trial type's validator? If it's not set, we'll try to load it using load validator. And here, load validator goes, okay, if we have validator directories that we can try to find validators in, if it's an array of directories, we're going to create specific from directories. Otherwise, we'll just get it from the single directory. And that goes to validator factory. So it's pretty simple. All it does is God, where's that file? Okay, so it's going to go ahead and say, am I asking for multiple trial types? Hold on a second. I'm kind of getting lost in my own head here. Okay. All right. Validators equals self create from dir. So what it does is it goes get the paths for all of the places that there are trial types in the directory that I give it.
Mm-hmm.
If that directory has a folder that matches the trial type. Wait, what the fuck does this do? Oh my god. Sorry about it. Okay. This one, okay. This function, create from dir, will create an associated array of all the possible validator directories.
Okay.
In fact, it creates validators for all of them, and all that means is that it's creating one of these guys here, where every time it finds, so say we have two directories, and both of them have a, in fact, I put this in the test. I'll just show you in the test. It's so much easier. I know this is getting confusing. This is going to be much clearer in a second. Okay, so over here on the left, and I know you probably can't read it, but I have two folders, one called validator directory 1, validator directory 2. If I pass these both in to experiment in the beginning, these are the two places it'll look for validators. And the way it looks for them is it looks in that directory, it will look for folders. And if it finds a folder that matches a trial type that we're trying to get the validator for, it'll look in that folder for the validator.php, and it'll create a validator object using that path. Okay. And since this validator directory 2 also has, so one has test trial type 1 and test trial type 2, the other one has test trial type 1, 2, and 3. Since both directories have overlapping trial types, when I create the validator for test trial type 1, it will actually have two validator functions that it will run every time for that trial type. The validator.php, for this case, in custom, and the one in not custom.
Okay.
Okay. And so all it does is it adds the path to the check. And when you call validate, it runs through each of the checks. It includes it. So here you can see for every check that we pass, it's as a path. Include that path, which should return a Lambda function, an anonymous function, and it has to accept a trial. Actually, it doesn't have to accept a trial. You can just set one up, but it should accept a trial so that you can do things like trial get key. So in this case, this one would return failed if it couldn't get key 1, if it didn't exist.
Okay.
Or if it returns something falsy, obviously. So it goes through, it includes it, it runs the check, by passing the trial to it, so the post trial or the main trial. So we're always going to use validate and then pass a trial to it. It's going to check the return type. It has to return a string, null, or true. Null or true if it passed, or the string saying why it didn't pass if it didn't pass. And then it returns, what it returns is an errors array of the message and the debug info for the trial. So if we go back to the trial here, main trial, validate, you can see here it goes, it gets its own validator, doing all that stuff we just talked about. If when experiment tried to get the validator, it couldn't find a validator for this trial type, it stores the validator path as null. So when I try to get the validator, it's not going to be set. So that's why I'm checking. If it's set, then do this stuff. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's going to pass validation because there's no validator.
Yeah, like no one's checking.
Right. So if I have a validator set, get the result from that, which is either going to be true, null, or a string. For each result, pass it to the errors deal. Wait, does it? Yeah. Oh no, it won't return. So if it's not true or null, if it's a string, so sorry, I said that wrong just now. I'm sorry about that. So the result is either going to be a string or it's going to be null, an empty array. So this should be the array of errors returned by this validator. So say we wanted to get 2 keys or whatever, and it failed. It'll return the array of the message and the information about the trial. And then for every error that it finds, it's going to add it to this errors array, and it'll and then it checks in the post trials, and it runs validate on the post trials using their own validators, and then it returns all the errors that it finds in the main trial and the post trials to the experiment. And the experiment returns the errors it found here. It's doing this here, this for each result is error, errors equals error, to flatten the arrays out a little bit, otherwise they get super nested. So that got kind of confusing, I'm sure it did. I'm sorry about that. But suffice to say that you create validators by including them in the trial type deal under validator.php. If it finds multiple validators, it will use both of them by default. But you can turn that off by only passing in. I don't know if that's something we want or not, but I just put it that way.
I mean, we shouldn't be doing. I mean, I'm trying to think of use cases of when it would matter one way or the other.
I feel like if you overwrite a trial, then you.
I mean, generally the thing we've been telling people is that if you're going to override a trial, copy it out of trial types, put it into your custom trial types, and now we'll use that version instead.
So we only need to use that version instead. If that's the case, then I shouldn't be trying to get both validators, just get the one.
Yeah, because I could also imagine like a real sort of immediate use case would be somebody copies a trial type because they modified it, they copied a folder, they deleted the validator, and now they're modifying it because they didn't need one of the values we were checking for. And so they basically said, well, I know what my input is, so don't validate it. But now we'll still default to the old validator and say, hey, you don't have this value that you're not using anymore.
And I'll be like, what the hell? I don't.
Yeah, like I thought I got rid of this stuff.
Okay, yeah, I'll change that to only use the one validator. But otherwise, what it does, it just stores the path to it, and then it tries to get that thing. It runs it. It makes sure it gets a good response, which should be a string. It returns the string and some debug information and goes on its merry way. You can create a validator on the spot too if you want, by creating a file, creating a new validator, and then running validator validate on. You pass it a trial. So you would do that. Something like if I was down here and I wanted to do one, I could just be like, new validator equals new validator. The path to the custom validator. Or not even pass the path. You could just do new validator and then go new validator. Add check. Add the path to the check. Doesn't have to be called validate.php. If you're adding it this way, you can call it whatever you want. Validate.txt as long as it deals. And then you can just be like, okay, I want to validate my current file. So new validator, validate, experiment, get current. So you can create one on the spot if you want, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And run it.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's everything, and I've got a few notes here on things to change. Is there anything else? I guess I could tell you about how the autoloader works, but it's kind of like, if you want to, I can tell you.
So I'm getting actually weird issues with the autoloader sporadically on my laptop, which I cannot explain. Like, I really think it might just be my laptop. Because I had an issue yesterday when I would go to the main index page, like the root index, and it would tell me I don't have an autoloader to get to settings. But everyone else would be able to use it. And then I opened it in Chrome, went to the same location, and it worked. Then I opened an incognito window in Firefox, and that one worked.
Yeah. So Tyson told me you had something like that. So there's a couple things that I would say. One, I noticed that sometimes when I changed Git branches, something would go wrong. I don't know what it was, but I think it had something to do with how it parsed like loose files or how it handled them. But whenever I changed Git branches to like the old collector or whatever, and back to mine, something would break. So I stopped doing that. I started keeping separate folders for separate like big branches, like dev and master are their own folder, and this is its own folder. And that hasn't been a problem. And then the other thing is that
I just did it to me when I switched branches. You're right.
And the other thing was that sometimes if I switch branches, I had to restart my server. I don't know what the hell it was saving, that it wouldn't refresh or whatever, but it worked if I restarted. So I'd say just kind of have different folders for the different branches. I know it's a pain in the ass, but
I mean, eventually we'll just have one branch and it won't matter anymore. But yeah, it does seem to be tied to Git because I just noticed I did exactly what you said. I switched from your class to dev, then back to yours, and it happened.
So there might be something. Hold on. There might be. I think I know how to fix it though. If I can go to that real quick and not show you all of my porn real quick. Oh gosh. I'll tell you a story in a minute. I don't want to do it on air.
Off the air conversation.
So, if I go to Git extensions, I'll go to Git browse, and then I went to settings, tools, settings, and then I went to Git config. No, wait, not config. It was one of these. Update submodules, and I was doing it because it had a weird thing in one of my other submodules. I'm just gonna find it real quick. I know it's right here. It's one of these options. I know it's right here. Where the hell is it? It's like
Plugins, autocompile submodules.
No, I was looking for something else and I saw this randomly off to the side. It had nothing to do with the submodules. I figured that out separately. It has something to do with, oh, here it is. Behavior, include untracked files in stash.
Okay, so turn that off or turn it on, or?
I think if it's not checked and you check it, it'll work now. If it's already checked, then whatever I said is bullshit.
So mine was already checked, but I'm going to see what happens here when I switch. I'm going to switch to dev and then switch back. Actually, let me turn off this one here.
think it might be because you have some kind of loose file or something. I don't know.
Let's see if this works. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm unchecking it and switching back to that branch. Let's see what happens. Still broken.
Yeah, I don't know then. Something to do with how like there's got to be some kind of weird file overlap.
Yeah, something's going weird. I mean, it might just be like the way the git ignore is set up there. It's ignoring a file it should not be ignoring.
All right.
Well, we can figure this out later.
I'll make these changes. Oh, looks like I had some errors too. Oh, mark complete, but we already had that error. Okay. I'm gonna close this. Cancel. Can you take us off the arrow and tell you that story?
Sure. All right, and